Good evening. We're back in New York tonight, back on the story that shook the world this weekend. The sudden U.S. raid on Nicolas Maduro. Delta Force commandos snatched the Venezuelan dictator and his wife from a fortified compound in Caracas on Saturday. And now they are both here in New York City tonight in a notorious federal detention facility.
Two men who once lived entirely different lives are now confined within the same concrete walls. One built his legacy on music, glamour, and fame, while the other maintained power through fear and authority. Yet both Sean Diddy Combs and Nicolas Maduro are now described as sharing the same harsh reality inside Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center. Known among federal inmates and even guards as a place of punishment rather than rehabilitation, the facility represents a dramatic fall from their former lives of excess and control. The same locked hallways, isolation units, and sleepless nights now surround them, highlighting the striking irony of a former president, once accustomed to luxury, and a music mogul once surrounded by privilege now enduring the same cold confinement and echoing silence of unseen cells.
The MDC is a far cry from Maduro's palace in Caracas. Now, law enforcement sources tell us that he is being held in one of the top floors of this jail. They say that he is not being held in isolation, but is being held with other higher profile inmates.
The speed and spectacle of the moment shocked everyone, as Maduro's capture unfolded almost instantly, culminating in a helicopter flight into New York and arrival at an unassuming concrete building most pass without knowing what lies inside. Reports described armed guards with machine guns surrounding the facility while crowds gathered outside, some demanding justice and others vengeance, their loyalties marked by the flags they carried. By Sunday night, both Maduro and his wife were placed in solitary confinement under what officials label special administrative measures, a term widely known by those familiar with the facility to mean total isolation, eating alone, sitting alone, and slowly losing any sense of time. This same stretch of Brooklyn has held some of the most notorious names in recent history, including El Chapo Guzman, Sam Bankman-Fried, Ghislaine Maxwell, and now Diddy, whose once polished global image collapsed under federal charges that sent shockwaves through the music industry. When the verdict was delivered in July 2025, he was convicted on 2 counts related to transportation for what prosecutors described as commercial intimacy, acquitted of the most severe allegations but still facing consequences, and in October, he was sentenced to just over 4 years behind bars.
Prosecutors, on the other hand, said Diddy was not sorry and that his apology was phony and that there was some serious harm done to the victims of this case. Like you said, they wanted a sentence of at least 11 years. Ultimately, we know a sentence has now been shared with the court of 4 years behind bars.
Since then, the hip-hop legend who once mingled with presidents has been reduced to sleeping on a steel bunk with a 1-inch mattress, no pillow, and a light overhead that never shuts off, while now Maduro, a man who once governed Venezuela from a marble-lined palace, awakens under nearly identical conditions. The contrast is stark and unsettling. Images released after his capture showed the former president being led through a side entrance by DEA agents, his hands bound and his expression frozen in disbelief. Just days earlier, he was flanked by motorcades and soldiers. Now, he is surrounded by armed guards and fatigues, carrying M4 rifles, marking a dramatic and humiliating fall from power.
We're in the unit that was 1 floor above mine. So in terms of like the setting, it's a fairly decent chance that the room I'm describing is similar to where Diddy is. Yeah.
The same cameras that once broadcast his speeches now document his intake into a facility infamous for brutal winters, insect-ridden meals, and frequent power outages that leave inmates shivering in darkness. Long criticized by the Legal Aid Society as a symbol of extreme neglect, a claim that once seemed overstated until judges themselves began refusing to send defendants there. The institution has become the backdrop for an unusually stark convergence of downfalls. We have witnessed powerful figures collapse before, but rarely in such contrasting ways. Diddy's unraveling came gradually, buried under layers of scandal, while Maduro's power vanished almost overnight. Now fate has placed them within the same walls, a disgraced former world leader and a fallen entertainment mogul, both reduced to symbols of greed and excess, in a place where status dissolves and privilege means nothing.
claimed that somebody held a knife to his throat. He woke up and this guy basically had him, and he had the knife, and Diddy was at this person's mercy. Now, it's unclear what exactly happened from there. Was there a guard that came in? Did Diddy somehow fight this person off? Well, seems unlikely that happened. Or did the person just leave? Bottom line, this guy, at least according to people close to Diddy and Diddy himself, could have hurt him badly or even taken his life.
The MDC makes no distinction based on who you once were, because once the doors close, everyone lives with the same spreading mold on the walls, the same foul-smelling meals, and the same rigid rules that erase every hint of privilege. Diddy may have once celebrated freedom in his music, but inside those walls there is only the constant hum of fluorescent lights and the echo of steel doors slamming shut. Still, the timing of events has raised eyebrows, as sources close to the Bureau of Prisons claim both men are being held under the highest security classification, though not in adjacent areas. That hasn't stopped quiet speculation among staff, with whispers of sudden lockdowns, last-minute shift changes, and multiple convoys arriving at strange hours when only one was expected, fueling theories that some form of indirect communication may have taken place through messages relayed by personnel, even if nothing has been officially acknowledged.
Concerned that Sean Diddy Combs could be assaulted, violently assaulted. Is that a thing? Because based on what was said in court, it feels like it.
Outside the prison, demonstrations have escalated into a dramatic public display, with Venezuelan exiles alongside New York activists, some demanding Maduro's freedom while others applaud his downfall. The scene reflects the same kind of media spectacle that surrounded Diddy's trial earlier this year, when jurors heard weeks of testimony about his alleged parties, influence, and manipulation within the music industry.
Essentially said that Sean Combs led a criminal enterprise for his desires, that he tried to cover up crimes, that he was the leader of this criminal enterprise, and that he committed at least two, that they believe, of these elements that are part of the racketeering.
The media coverage ended with his partial conviction, but the legal storm around him has not slowed. As appeals have been filed, his business empire faces scrutiny, and more than 100 civil lawsuits reportedly wait in court. Once known as Brother Love, he is now simply Inmate Combs, number undisclosed, and amid that collapse one disturbing detail continues to resurface. An alleged nighttime attack in which another inmate reportedly held a homemade blade to his throat, an incident shared by a close friend and said to have prompted tighter security despite never being publicly confirmed. That backdrop makes Maduro's arrival even more explosive, placing a former head of state inside a facility already charged with tension, rumor, and violence. The Metropolitan Detention Center is not just a temporary stop but a brutal threshold before long-term imprisonment. A place Diddy's own lawyers described as exceptionally hard, with small cinderblock cells, non-stop fluorescent lights, frequent power failures, freezing temperatures, insect-infested food, broken plumbing, and blackouts that leave inmates desperate for air and light. For Maduro, once a symbol of power while millions suffered under his rule, the confinement reads as grim irony. For Diddy, it is another weight added to a downfall that seems endless. Outside, journalists who once chronicled celebrity parties now wait for Maduro's arraignment as protesters hold signs welcoming him to hell. While inside, Diddy remains under special watch, increasingly silent and withdrawn, his fame dissolving into the background hum of prison life. Two once powerful men now stand cornered within the same system, stripped of influence, left with nothing but time closing in on them.
You mentioned Maduro's arraignment. It is set for noon tomorrow, and he faces a slew of federal charges, including for terrorism, which, if convicted, could net him decades in prison.
Their stories can be followed separately, yet the point where they intersect is impossible to ignore. Diddy's downfall unfolded through testimony from women he once dominated, while Maduro's collapse came swiftly through the reach of U.S. power, and still both have ended up inside the same crumbling stronghold of the justice system. This has sparked an uncomfortable question about whether their shared confinement is mere coincidence or something more deliberate, whether placing them under one roof serves a purpose or keeps their narratives contained together by design. Regardless of intent, the result is clear. The Metropolitan Detention Center has become a focal point of global scandal, where disgraced celebrities and fallen heads of state exist side by side. Though cameras cannot enter, information has begun to leak out, each rumor darker than the last, with claims that Maduro has been sealed off for days with meals delivered by a single authorized guard. While Diddy's unit is reportedly under restricted movement, allegations the Bureau of Prisons continues to neither confirm nor deny.
He has been for months now, but last week he was taken to the hospital. According to reports from the New York Post, Diddy was transported from MDC in the cover of darkness at about 10 p.m. on January 30th. He was taken to a Brooklyn hospital for an MRI after reporting issues with his.
The more closely the situation is examined, the more unsettling it appears. A former dictator accused of wrecking his country's economy, now confined near a mogul convicted of abusing power and fame, both immensely wealthy, both supported by loyal followers outside, and both maintaining their innocence. The parallel feels intentional, like two collapsing empires reflected inside a facility long described as a living hell. Then came the rumors, quiet whispers that surfaced briefly and vanished before their source could be traced, suggesting this convergence was no accident. Guards changing shifts spoke of odd activity near the isolation wing. An extra door inspection, a camera feed briefly going dark, an unlogged convoy arriving unexpectedly, just enough to ignite speculation that Nicolas Maduro and Sean Diddy Combs may have somehow made indirect contact inside Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center. In a place where every movement is monitored, unexplained silence only deepens suspicion, especially given past patterns in such institutions where powerful men, stripped of influence, attempt to form new alliances. One correctional source claimed staff rotations were ordered between Maduro's wing and Diddy's unit, a move that seems unnecessary unless communication was a concern, and the timing raised further questions when, within 48 hours of Maduro's arrival, Diddy's attorneys filed an unexpected procedural motion tied to his appeal, officially unrelated but reportedly following an unplanned meeting request logged in the system. The Bureau of Prisons has declined to comment, yet the speculation has taken on a life of its own as the MDC becomes a focal point for both foreign press and New York tabloids, with Venezuelan reporters camped outside, bloggers claiming offers for inside photos, and eyewitnesses describing late-night helicopter activity over barricaded streets, fueling theories that have now become inseparable from the story itself.
So these are fluorescent lights.
Yeah.
And you're sleeping in that light. What was the first night there?
First night was very intense. Again, I'm, coming down off and by that time, the second time I went in, between the two times I got in a terrible.
It's easy to see why this story has captured so much attention, because the similarities between these two men are impossible to overlook. Both lived for years surrounded by wealth and privilege, both believed themselves untouchable, and both now wake to the same slamming metal doors, identical food trays, and the same disorder echoing through prison hallways. This is the point where global power and celebrity collide with their most humbling reality, as the Metropolitan Detention Center, originally built to relieve overcrowding, has become a symbol of total collapse, a place where billion-dollar empires wait in limbo for hearings that may never arrive. Public records show Maduro is held under special administrative measures with almost no direct inmate contact. Yet corrections experts stress the system is far from sealed, noting that shared guards, medical staff, maintenance crews, and overlapping zones create constant opportunities for information to move. As one retired officer put it, communication in places like this doesn't rely on phones or letters, but on whispered words passed through vents. Subtle, invisible, and powerful enough to trigger concern at the highest levels if even the slightest exchange were to occur.
Diddy, obviously just starting out his time, well, not just starting out, but starting out his official sentence since being sentenced not too long ago. And I think suffice to say, it's not going well so far.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, he's got 4 years and change that he's going to ultimately have to serve, although he has served already a year as he awaited his trial and then went through his trial.
Inside the facility, Diddy's presence is said to still carry weight, with other inmates reacting to him with a mix of fascination and hostility, and some reportedly labeling him the insider after his appeal became public, suggesting he somehow knows what lies ahead, though that remains unconfirmed. What is known is that his attorneys met privately with federal prosecutors late last month. Around the same time, reports emerged of urgent maintenance work inside the isolation block, a coincidence that adds to the sense that events are being quietly orchestrated rather than randomly unfolding. For Maduro, the situation is even more consequential, as his Manhattan federal arraignment has now been postponed twice under the explanation of logistical complications. Even while media line-sitters continue waiting outside the courthouse, hinting that behind the delays may be negotiations focused not on release but on information, especially given that his capture involved multiple agencies and typically would have led directly to interrogation rather than prolonged detention. As violence, staff shortages, power failures, and security concerns continue to surface inside the MDC, including the alleged knife attack on Diddy and the denial of his transfer request, the prison itself begins to feel like an active force in the story, feeding on the downfall of powerful figures. Adding to the unease are claims from multiple unrelated sources that messages may already be leaving the facility through visitors, raising speculation that Diddy's entertainment world connections and Maduro's political and business allies could be operating through parallel, possibly intersecting networks. A theory strengthened by overlapping lawyers, consultants, and security firms appearing in both spheres. This convergence prompts a darker question about who benefits, as some observers argue Maduro's highly publicized capture serves political theater during an election season, while Diddy's case reinforces narratives of federal authority over celebrity power, turning the MDC itself into a symbolic stage where these storylines merge, an unsettling scenario in which a disgraced dictator and a fallen music mogul become entwined within the same decaying institution, stripped of control yet still capable of influence.
We haven't seen the indictments yet. There's been some time lag. I suppose it will take some time to go through all the forensic, evidence.
Now deprived of the control that once defined them, both men are being forced to adapt or risk unraveling, with those close to Diddy saying he swings between isolation and sudden flashes of charm, offering advice to younger inmates and quoting lyrics about survival, while Venezuelan state media paints Maduro as a victim of inhumane treatment, casting him as a martyr. That contrast, charisma versus victimhood, reflects the way each shaped public perception long before prison walls closed in, underscoring how narratives can still be manipulated from behind bars. The result has been a mix of fear, intrigue, and political tension, amplified by reports that Donald Trump privately called Maduro's arrest a strong move even as aides denied any connection between the two detentions. Still, the coincidence continues to fuel speculation, with every new leak igniting theories online that these incarcerations are part of a broader campaign linking politics, celebrity, and power under the same cold fluorescent lights. What's visible are only fragments: Diddy's ongoing appeals, Maduro's repeatedly delayed hearings, and an MDC plagued by failures. But together they form an unsettling pattern in which two of the world's most polarizing figures live parallel sentences, watched by silent guards and imperfect cameras inside a building that seems to vibrate with unfinished business. Whether this is coincidence, cautionary tale, or calculated control remains unclear, but as one insider suggested, it may no longer be about punishment at all, and with each new motion, blackout, or leak, the story continues to deepen, hinting that whatever is unfolding inside the Metropolitan Detention Center is far from over.